In Chinese mythology, the afterlife is governed by a complex hierarchy of deities who preside over the underworld, commonly known as Diyu. This vast and intricate realm is divided into various courts and hells, each ruled by a deity responsible for judging, punishing, and ultimately determining the fate of souls. In a previous video, I covered the journey through the Chinese afterlife. In this video, I will go deeper into the roles of the Chinese hell deities, beginning with King Yan Luo. King Yan Luo, also known as King Yama, is the Chinese god of death and the ruler of hell, traditionally overseeing all 10 courts in their judgment of souls. As mentioned in my previous video on the Chinese afterlife, there is a belief that he was later replaced by King Qin, who was deemed by the Jade Emperor to be stricter. Despite this, King Yan Luo remains widely venerated by the public as the King of Hell. He currently serves as the ruler of the Fifth Court. King Yan Luo is typically portrayed as a large man with a scowling red face, bulging eyes, and a long beard. He wears traditional robes and a judge's cap or crown adorned with the Chinese character for king. He is accompanied by a judge who holds a brush and a book listing each soul and their death date. In some traditions, King Yan Luo is not seen as a specific individual but rather as a position within a celestial hierarchy. There are stories of honest mortals being appointed to this role, including the Chinese magistrate Bao Zheng, 999 to 1062 AD, a renowned judge from the Song dynasty known for his uprightness. He is occasionally accompanied by 3 assistants named old age, illness, and death. In Chinese Buddhism, Yama is also regarded as one of the 20 devas, Shi Zhu Tian, or the 24 devas, Shi Si Zhu Tian. Another hell deity with similar authority to King Yan Luo is the Buddhist Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. He is one of the 4 principal bodhisattvas in Mahayana Buddhism, alongside Samantabhadra, Manjusri, and Avalokiteshvara, Guanyin. Ksitigarbha, Di Zong Wang, is commonly depicted as a Buddhist monk, often accompanied by or seated on a dog. This reference relates to a legend where Ksitigarbha discovered that his mother had been reborn as a dog named Deiting. He adopted Deiting as his steed and guardian, with Deiting having the ability to distinguish between good and evil actions. In his right hand, Ksitigarbha carries a kakra, a staff traditionally used by monks to alert insects and small animals of his approach, preventing accidental harm. This staff is also said to have the power to open the gates of hell. In his left hand, he holds a tear-shaped jewel, or sintamani, believed to grant wishes and illuminate the darkness of hell. Ksitigarbha is often shown standing on a lotus base, symbolizing his liberation from the cycle of rebirth. Ksitigarbha is renowned for his vow to guide all beings in the 6 realms between the death of Gautama Buddha and the coming of Maitreya. He has pledged not to attain Buddhahood until all hells are emptied. Consequently, he is seen as the Bodhisattva of hell beings and, in Japanese culture, as Jizo, the guardian of children and the patron deity of deceased and aborted children. The Ksitigarbha Sutra reveals that in ancient times, Ksitigarbha was once a Brahmin maiden named Sacred Girl. She was deeply distressed by her mother's death, particularly because her mother had spoken ill of the 3 jewels. To rescue her mother from hell's torments, Sacred Girl sold all her possessions and used the proceeds to offer daily gifts to the Buddha of her time, known as the Buddha of the Flower of Meditation and Enlightenment. She prayed earnestly for her mother's deliverance and sought the Buddha's help. While praying at the temple, the Buddha instructed her to return home, sit quietly, and recite his name to learn about her mother's fate. Following his guidance, her consciousness was transported to a hell realm, where a guardian revealed that her mother had accumulated enough merit through Sacred Girl's devout prayers and offerings to ascend to heaven. Although Sacred Girl was greatly relieved, the suffering she witnessed in hell deeply moved her. She vowed to dedicate herself to alleviating the suffering of all beings in her future lives. Reborn in Korea as Kim Gyogak, Jijong in Korean and Ksitigarbha in Sanskrit, a former prince from Silla who became a monk, he lived during the Tang dynasty under Emperor Ming of Han, when Buddhism was flourishing. Monks and scholars traveled from various regions, including Korea, to seek the Dharma in China. Zhejiang journeyed to Mount Jiuhua in present-day Anhui and built a hut in a remote area of the mountain to focus on his spiritual practice. Zhejiang continued to meditate in his hut for several years until one day, a scholar named Shuko visited the mountain with friends and family. Noticing Zhejiang's condition, his lack of food and unkempt hair, they decided to build a temple in his honor. Mount Jiuhua was owned by a wealthy man named Elder Wenku, who agreed to fund the temple. Wenku and the group asked Zhejiang how much land he needed. Zhejiang requested only enough land to be covered by his Ksaya, monastic robe. They were astonished when Zhejiang tossed the Ksaya into the air and it expanded to cover the entire mountain. Impressed, Elder Wenku renounced ownership of the mountain to Zhejiang and became his protector. Later, Wenku's son also chose to leave secular life and become a monk. Zhejiang resided on Mount Jiuhua for 75 years and passed away at the age of 99. 3 years after his death, his tomb was opened, revealing that his body had not decayed. This led many to believe that he was indeed an incarnation of Ksitigarbha. Mount Jiuhua is now considered one of China's 4 sacred mountains. Zhejiang's well-preserved, mummified body can still be seen today at the monastery he established on Mount Jiuhua. Next, I will talk about the famous hell guards of Black and White Impermanence, as well as Ox-head and Horse-faced. Black and White Impermanence, Heibai Wuchang, are 2 Chinese deities of the underworld responsible for escorting the spirits of the dead. As their names suggest, they are dressed in black and white, respectively. They serve the king of the underworld, alongside the ox-headed and horse-faced hell guards. In some regions, they are worshipped as fortune deities and are also venerated in temples dedicated to city deities, Qinghuang Miao. In some variations, Black and White Impermanence are depicted as a single entity known as the Ghost of Impermanence, Wu Chang Gui. This entity can either appear as a fortune deity who rewards good deeds or as a malevolent deity who punishes evil, depending on the individual they encounter. Black Impermanence is named Fan Wujiu, which roughly translates to, those who commit crimes should not receive any salvation. White Impermanence is named Xie Bayan, meaning, those who make amends will always be at peace. As a result, they are sometimes referred to as Generals Fan and Xie, Fan Xie Jiang Jun. In Fujian province and among overseas Chinese communities in Southeast Asia, such as Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia, they are known as first and second masters, de er lao yi, or first and second uncles, de er yi bo in Chinese, or tua di a pek/tua li ya pek in Hokkien. In Taiwan, they are called seventh and eighth masters, chi yi ba yi. In Sichuan province, they are referred to as the 2 masters wu er yi. White Impermanence is typically portrayed as a fair-skinned man dressed in a white robe, wearing a tall hat with Chinese inscriptions such as, "Become rich upon encountering me," "Become lucky upon encountering me," or, "You have come too." He often holds a hand fan in one hand and a fish-shaped shackle or wooden sign in the other. He is usually depicted as the taller of the 2. Black Impermanence is usually represented as a dark-skinned man dressed in a black robe, wearing a hat similar to that of White Impermanence. The inscriptions on his hat may read, "Peace to the world" or "Arresting you right now." He holds a hand fan in one hand and a square wooden sign in the other, inscribed with, making a clear distinction between good and evil, or rewarding the good and punishing the evil. A long chain is often wrapped around one of his arms. In some depictions, they have fierce expressions with snarling faces and long red tongues sticking out to scare away evil spirits. However, in other representations, White Impermanence appears friendly and approachable, while Black Impermanence looks stern and fierce. The most common origin story tells of Xie Bayan and Fan Wujiu, who were once constables working for the government. One day, while escorting a convict to another location, the convict escaped. The 2 decided to split up and search for the escapee, agreeing to meet later under a bridge. However, Xie Bayan was delayed by heavy rain and didn't arrive on time. Fan Wujiu, who arrived punctually, waited under the bridge, but the area flooded due to the rain. Refusing to leave because of his promise, Fan Wujiu drowned. When Xie Bayan finally arrived, he was heartbroken to find his friend dead and committed suicide by hanging himself. The Jade Emperor, moved by their loyalty and friendship, appointed them as guardians of the underworld. Another version describes Black Impermanence as an addict who spent his time gambling, despite his father's attempts to discipline him. After losing all his money in gambling, he had a violent argument with his father, who, in a fit of rage, killed him. After death, Black Impermanence was sent to hell, where he was punished. He eventually repented and atoned for his sins by performing good deeds and was subsequently appointed as a guard of the underworld. White Impermanence, on the other hand, was born into a wealthy family and was known for his kind nature. One day, his father sent him on an errand with a large sum of money, but he ended up using the money to help a poor family in need. He felt too ashamed to return home and face his parents, so he committed suicide. The heavenly gods, recognizing his good deeds, appointed him as a guard of the underworld. Oxhead and Horseface, Nyo Tu Ma Mian, are also guardians of the underworld. As their names suggest, both possess the bodies of men, with Oxhead having the head of an ox and Horseface having the face of a horse. They are the first beings a soul encounters upon entering the underworld, and in many stories, they directly escort the newly deceased to the underworld, although this role can sometimes be taken over by Black and White Impermanence. As guardians of hell, Oxhead and Horseface are responsible for capturing the souls of those whose earthly lives have ended and bringing them before the courts of hell, where the souls are judged and either rewarded or punished based on their actions during their lifetime. According to one legend, King Yan Luo took pity on a hard-working ox and a loyal horse who had served their human masters faithfully throughout their lives. Upon their deaths, instead of allowing them to enter the cycle of reincarnation, he transformed them into his loyal servants in the underworld. Oxhead and Horseface were given human bodies with their original animal heads to reflect their origins. Another darker story suggests that Oxhead and Horseface were originally human beings who committed grave sins during their lifetimes. As punishment, they were condemned to serve in the underworld, transformed into their current forms to reflect their animalistic nature. Their grotesque appearances serve as a reminder of the consequences of their actions and their eternal servitude in hell. Finally, the story of Chinese hell deities would be incomplete without mentioning Meng Po. Meng Po is a Chinese hell goddess known for serving Meng Po soup on Nai He Bridge. This soup erases the memories of souls, allowing them to reincarnate into their next life without the burdens of their past. Meng Po serves in the 10th court of hell dealing with reincarnation. Her role is to ensure that souls ready for reincarnation do not remember their previous lives or their time in hell. To achieve this, she creates her 5-flavored soup of forgetfulness. Each soul drinks this brew before leaving hell, which induces instant and permanent amnesia, erasing all memories of past lives. Once purged of their previous sins and knowledge, the souls are sent to be reborn according to the karma they accrued in their past lives, continuing the cycle of reincarnation. In Chinese tradition, there are legends of miraculous births where a newborn can speak because the soul did not drink Meng Po's soup. Occasionally, individuals who manage to avoid drinking the brew are able to recount their past life memories during childhood. It is said that while she was alive, Meng Po was Lady Meng Jiang, who lived during the reign of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, known for his harsh rule and the construction of the Great Wall. Lady Meng Jiang came from a kind and loving family and was well known for her beauty and virtues. One day, a man named Fan Qiliang, who was fleeing from forced labor conscription, sought refuge in the Meng family's garden and met Lady Meng Jiang. Her family took in Fan Qiliang, and the two soon fell in love and were married. Unfortunately, shortly after their wedding, soldiers discovered Fan Qiliang and forcibly took him away to work on the construction of the Great Wall. Lady Meng Jiang waited anxiously for news of her husband. As months passed with no word, she became increasingly worried. Determined to find him, she set out on a long and arduous journey to the Great Wall, carrying warm clothing she had made to protect him from the harsh winter. When Lady Meng Jiang finally reached the Great Wall, she learned that her husband had died from exhaustion and was buried within the wall itself, alongside countless other laborers. Overwhelmed with grief and despair, Lady Meng Jiang wept bitterly. Her sorrow was so profound that her cries caused a section of the Great Wall to collapse, revealing the bones of her husband. The news of the wall's collapse reached Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who was furious and demanded to see the woman responsible. However, upon meeting Lady Meng Jiang and seeing her beauty, the emperor asked her to marry him. Lady Meng Jiang agreed, but only under 3 conditions. First, that the emperor arrange a proper burial for her husband and allow her to perform the rites. Second, that a temple be built in honor of her husband. And third, that she be allowed to visit the sea before returning to the emperor's palace. When Lady Meng Jiang went to the sea, she wept and lamented her tragic fate. Overcome by sorrow, she ultimately threw herself into the waves, ending her life. After death, Lady Meng Jiang found herself in the Chinese hell, unable to reincarnate due to her overwhelming grief for her husband. To relieve the suffering of other spirits, she took it upon herself to create a soup that would allow them to forget the pains of their earthly lives.